This hour for you on Daybreak, a lot of results from the primary election to go through, especially discussing Medicaid expansion. It's all ahead for you this hour on Daybreak.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Today is Wednesday, August 5th. I'm Jennifer Abreu.
And I'm Joe Moreno. A lot of those election results are online, of course. They're on the bottom of your screen, but we'll take you through them too.
Yes, we have our political analyst, Dr. Brian Calfano, in later on in the newscast to explain what the results from last night mean going into November. And speaking of November, it's been kind of feeling like almost like November the past couple of days. A little cool, right?
More like September.
So, well,
November is like pushing it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But yeah, definitely feeling like fall for sure. And today is kind of one of those last cooler days. We'll start to crank the heat and humidity a little bit more starting tomorrow. This morning, we're starting out with a really pretty sunrise. We've got temperatures pretty cool. It's 56 degrees right now in Springfield with the southerly winds and the dew points in the lower 50s. You've got a couple of clouds out there this morning with things dry to start, so it's comfortable out there. You've got temperatures more or less where they were yesterday, a little bit cooler in spots with it being 56 degrees in Springfield, a pair of 5s in Camdenton, and 57 degrees in West Plains. Dew points are in the low to middle 50s, so that's another kind of crisp and comfortable feel out there for you this morning, pretty similar to yesterday, with it feeling comfortable and pleasant on that muggy meter map. Dry roads as we head through the afternoon. We'll have no weather hazards for you out there. Things will just be mostly sunny and nice, so no weather hazards for you out there today. If you're waiting for a package, your package will come in dry. You're looking at highs up around 81 degrees with some nice sunshine and no rain chances. Now we've got a warming trend to track and some storm chances returning with the summer-like heat and humidity. Details on that coming up in 10 minutes.
As you know, Color 10 is your local election headquarters. We understand who we'll be seeing on the November ballot in just a few months now.
And the big question statewide last night, expanding Medicaid. It was close, but Missouri voted to pass it. That's right. 53% voted yes to Amendment 2, 46% saying no. The amendment makes the requirement to get Medicaid and income at 133% of the poverty level or below. This would expand Medicaid to people between the ages of 19 and 64 who meet that income requirement. That's right. That 133% of that level means if you make as a single person less than about $17,000 a year, you'd be eligible. For a couple, it's about $23,000 a year or less. Those who are in favor of Medicaid expansion say it would help an estimated 230,000 people in Missouri get health insurance. Those against it say it's too expensive and would force more cuts from programs like education. Now, State Representative Crystal Quaid and State Senator Eric Burleson remain opposite sides of this issue.
There are so many of us that have been working on this issue for almost 10 years now since we have had the ability in the state of Missouri. And so I will be thrilled. I know so many individuals who have truly needed healthcare access and just fall through the gap, and we'll just be very excited.
It makes no sense for government to prioritize above all of those things, paying for the healthcare of people that are old enough to work and pay for it themselves.
The expansion for Medicaid eligibility will go into effect July 1st of 2021. It's official. We now know who will face off in November for Missouri governor. In the Republican primary, Governor Mike Parson won 75% of the vote as he will attempt to stay governor. On the Democratic side, State Auditor Nicole Galloway picked up 84%, more than enough to win that primary. Both candidates won by a landslide last night, and this is the matchup many anticipated. Parson will seek to be elected governor for the first time. If you remember, Parson took over after former Governor Greitens resigned, and Galloway will look to become the first woman elected governor in Missouri after winning their respective primaries. Here is what each candidate had to say. Did you want this, Jones?
In 90 days, Missourians will again vote and decide which candidate's vision to support for the next 4 years. And you will decide who is going to keep you safe. Who can you trust to bring everyone together and move our state forward?
I'm running for governor to put Jefferson City back on the side of working families and act with urgency to protect our fellow Missourians. In times of crisis, unrest, and uneasiness, public officials must step up take control and act.
And you can see both candidates' full remarks on their respective Facebook pages. And we now want to bring in, again, our political analyst, Dr. Brian Calfano, to discuss this race with us. Thanks for being here this morning so early. I know you were here last night, too, discussing all of this.
Yeah, I slept behind the board here. It was great.
Just take a nap here in the newsroom. Well, Brian, both candidates now, it's official. No surprise here. We kind of knew this would happen, but it's official now. How will this shape up? I mean, both of them already have a history here in Missouri. How will the way Governor Parson handle this pandemic maybe help him or not help him?
Yeah, I mean, great questions. I think it's going to be a civil race in the sense that Galloway is a serious candidate. She's not going to be lobbing a bunch of bombs, so to speak, at Parson. And he's a gentleman. I mean, he's a nice guy. He can get kind of aggressive in some ways, but not in the sense that he's nasty. I don't expect this to be kind of a nasty campaign. This is going to be about how people want their state government to be positioned going forward. Is it going to be leaning in and trying to provide services for those who need service, like health care? Is it going to be talking about crime? Is it going to be talking about special interests in Jefferson City? I mean, these are all the different kinds of concerns that people in different parts of the state have, and it's just a matter of which side is able to effectively articulate the vision that most Missourians are looking for. Honestly, though, I think the bigger challenge for Galloway is going to be overcoming the Trump support that is still pretty palpable across the state. And Parson has to find a way to also tamp down on criticism that he was too slow to respond to coronavirus. So they both have challenges, but also some built-in advantages.
You talked about aligning themselves with what voters in Missouri want. Do you think Governor Parson and his support for President Trump will help him more, and that will be the biggest challenge for Galloway?
Yeah, it'll help Parson more in the sense there's a lot of knee-jerk support for President Trump, and those voters are less likely to decide that they're going to then vote for Galloway after they voted for Trump at the top of that ballot, right? So that's where the challenge is for Galloway. But for Governor Parson, in fact, for both candidates, it's going to be, okay, now that Medicaid expansion is passed, well, whose vision do you trust to implement? Because that's going to be huge. And I know they're talking about next year, middle of next year for this. Honestly, as we said, I don't know that that's going to be possible unless they're going to take the money from some other part of the budget or they're going to raise taxes. And there's just not a lot of fat to cut from the Missouri budget, even in a good year. And so what they're going to do, it's a mystery in terms of how this is going to go. And is Governor Parson running for re-election, is he going to say, hey, Missouri voters, you don't know what you're doing? You know, you shouldn't have done this expansion? Probably not the best thing to do when you're trying to run for re-election. He's going to have to figure out a way to soft pedal his initial opposition to Medicaid and talk about how he's going to implement it if he expects to try to get enough people behind him, because there were a good number of Republicans who would have voted for the Medicaid expansion given the mix of folks from turnout yesterday to suggest that there was a good degree of folks on the Republican or conservative side who thought Medicaid expansion was a good idea.
That will come down to that implementation then and how they will proceed with that. We'll continue following that. And I think also one thing Galloway will be talking about a lot is how Parson has been handling the state response to the pandemic. And as you mentioned, some people said he was too slow to respond. And I think she will really be maybe trying to push on that. Do you agree?
Of course, but be careful what you wish for. Let's say she wins. We're still going to be in this pandemic, right? And then all of a sudden those problems are yours. I mean, this is unprecedented in a lot of ways. And so I think she's got to be careful with that because there's only so much you can do as the governor. Really, we need a lot more federal assistance and leadership than we've gotten, quite frankly. And so as governor, you're kind of strung in there a little bit. You don't necessarily have the latitude you might need to make things happen. And of course, you can't control what happens outside your state. So there's a lot of trouble that governors have dealing with this. And Galloway would be in the same boat that Parson's been in.
All right, Brian, a lot to watch for the next few months, and we'll continue following that for you. Thanks for being here. Now let's check in with Joe for some local results.
That's right. In Springfield, voters spoke about a fee on short-term business loans. Voters in Missouri passed fees for short-term lending operations. Got 98% of precincts reporting, more than 14,000 in favor, good enough for 57% of the vote. This means there will be a $5,000 business license fee for payday lenders, installment loans, and basically any business that does short-term high-interest loans. The fee is annual or for new or renewal, and if a permit is issued with less than 6 months in the calendar year, it's a $2,500 fee. We spoke to a local associate minister, Emily Bowen-Marler with Brentwood Christian Church. She's a part of Faith Voices in town and is a group who is in favor of this. She says there are fees imposed on loan businesses in other cities like St. Louis and KC, and after a fee was imposed, there have not been new lending companies opening up and some even closed. Missouri legislators do not allow cities to cap the rate on predatory loans, so she told us this is the only step they can take for now.
The problem is there are these fees that get rolled over, so if people aren't able to make their payments, they can pay a rollover fee, and it just continues the cycle on and on and on. So people end up paying for their loans many times over, and it's not fair.
Now, we also reached out to a few payday loan businesses in Springfield, but have never heard back. If we do, you'll be able to find out about it on ozarksfirst.com. Also, in regard to voter turnout last night, which was higher than expected, we're checking in at about 32%. Now, Greene County Clerk Shane Scholler estimated around a 27% turnout as the elections got underway.
Full results on ozarksfirst.com under the News tab, Election Results.
We're starting out pretty cool again this morning. It is 56 degrees in Springfield. Details on that more summer-like heat and humidity returning this week coming up next.
From Color 10 Ozarks First, Jennifer Abreu, Joe Morano, and weather with meteorologist Alisa Rafa. This is Color 10 News Daybreak.